Welcome in to the Fill in the Blanks podcast. I am Jarvis Davis. I got my co-host with me, Tenitra Batiste.
Hey,
Tenitra, how are you today?
I am okay. I'm still I don't know what the driving version of jet lagged is, but a little bit of a long drive coming back from Louisiana from yesterday. But hey, all good, made it safe and sound, and that's all that counts. And like we were talking about offline, which, hey, listen, it was not Jarvis's fault today that we're running a few minutes late when my twin, i.e. his wife, and I get to talking, man. Sometimes
Yes, Lord.
we go in so many different directions. So we were having a lot of fun offline talking about Thanksgiving and how my family, the Hatfields and the McCoys, actually survived. So that's our definition of a happy Thanksgiving. Did we survive, or did we have a Hatfield McCoy situation and we actually survived? So we're good.
That's always a good thing. I like to call those moments, "Hey, girl, yes, I did." I like
Right.
I had that little moment
Hey,
for the
girl,
day.
right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yes, girl, all that stuff. I'll never be able to say that right, and I'm glad I'm not. I will
And
never
you're
be able
not
to say that
supposed to.
right.
Thank you.
Right,
I'm
there you
so
go.
glad that you
Yeah.
did not hit the proper cadence.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
But got a lot of good things on board for today.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Falcons, they get a chance to they beat the dog snot out of the Raiders. Yeah, we'll
Shockingly so.
43-6. We'll talk about that. Also, NFL. What is going on? What are they gonna
Yeah.
do? COVID has really, really
Yep.
they got off to
You're
a
starting to
really
see
good
it.
start. You starting to really see
Mm-hmm.
that COVID really touch the NFL in a negative way.
Yeah.
To put
Yeah.
it lightly. So we'll talk about that. But first, the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks get started today with training
Yes.
camp.
Training camp.
We are 10 days away from their first exhibition game. And let me tell you, like, it is hard for me not to be like uber excited
Yeah. The
about this
fandom.
team. Like, when you
Yeah.
think about
Yeah.
Bogdanovich, Rajon
Mm-hmm.
Rondo, Danilo Gallinari, Tony
Chris Dunn,
Snell,
Thomas
Chris
Snell. Yeah.
Dunn,
Yeah.
all of these additions, Onyeka Okongwu being
Yes.
drafted in the first round with the sixth
That's right.
overall pick out of USC. So all
Yes.
of these moves that, like, because we know here in Atlanta, we like moves, we like the
Yes.
conversations, we like to be a part of
Yes.
those things, and we were all this city. I mean, were
Yes.
just all a part of that. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Atlanta Hawks were the movers and shakers of free agency for sure.
They were. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think I would say this though, Tenitra, when you think about where this team is now, just on paper,
Mm-hmm.
do you think this is a playoff team?
I do. I do. And if I go back to last season, and I know poor John Collins is tired of hearing this ad nauseum, the 25 games,
Right.
what it looked like without him and what it looked like with him. And what it looked like when all of the pieces started to come together. Remember, Kevin Huerter was hurt a lot at the beginning of last season as well. Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter just getting their feet under them, if you will, and all of these moving parts in and out, 10-day, two-way contracts all over the place, right?
Yes.
So, Lloyd Pierce said something just before the season shut down, and essentially it was that he expected this team to be a playoff team last season. I'm sorry, this coming season. He said that last season.
Right.
And I have to tell you, with the moves that they've made, we both know the story. We both know the stat line, the 3-point percentage, and how atrocious that was. And granted, you got to remember, you got moving parts coming in and out. So that team chemistry, that team cohesion, and their ability to shoot and have the proper shooters in place, that was impacted. On the same token, you didn't have a lot of people to begin that season that had the right defensive mindset. So you bring in, for example, you bring back a Dwayne Dedman to fill in that gap, if you will. And now this season, you say, and you, Jarvis, I always defer to you because you're a longtime Atlanta native, but Lord, I've been here so long, I'm like a transplant native. But we have seen over and over again our teams make moves, and it's head scratchers. Like, wow, you had all that money in free agency. You could have made all these moves, but you didn't. Or we see in the draft, wow, you moved up for that player, or you didn't, you didn't stand pat. We don't understand.
Yeah.
Jarvis, for me, every move for the most part that either the Hawks made, including Rajon Rondo, it's so plentiful. It's like we can't even, mention all of them, or even a Skylar Mays at number 50 in the NBA draft. All of these moves truly do make sense. So if the players come together like their last move of last year with Clint Capella and all of the new moves this year, coupled with the fact that, of course, you're hopeful that they're going to stay healthy, because we did get reports that 3 of the MRI results came back yesterday with basically right knee sprain, left knee sprain, little toe issue, etc. Assuming that by December 11th, when those MRIs get done and those players are reevaluated, that you're walking into a season with a clean slate of players, yes, the expectation should be at a minimum that you make the playoffs.
Hey, I'm glad you brought up expectations, because the one thing that I've been consistently, it's been on my brain ever since this move happened. Ever since Nate McMillan was brought in as an assistant coach.
You have said that. Yes, you have.
I just wholeheartedly believe that, not that the Hawks are doing like this conniving, undermined type of situation, but when you think about them not having anyone on their on Lloyd Pierce's coaching staff that has head coaching experience prior to McMillan, it just makes too much sense that if Lloyd Pierce doesn't get it right,
yes,
if they come out struggling, let's say they start 2-12, who's to say Tony Ressler gonna say, "Hey man, who's the owner of the Atlanta Hawks?" For those who don't know, makes that phone call to Travis and say, "Hey man, you gonna have to do something about this."
Yes.
I don't want to see that, but I think that the message has been so clear this offseason. You said, it started back in March with Lloyd Pierce saying, "Hey, this is the playoff team," and then Tony Ressler doing interviews.
Yes.
And even Tony Ressler's wife saying on draft night, "Hey,
this will be the last time
I want to be in this
lottery."
So all of those things add up to higher expectations, like you talked about. And then that seat starts to heat up. And that's one of the things that we're gonna have to keep a very close eye on.
Because
it's all about getting out to a good start for this team.
Yes, Jarvis. And I love that you said that, because it reminds me of Dirk Cutter being the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Sorry. Where'd that come from? My bad.
Freudian slip, baby.
Sorry, my bad. Please proceed, please. Go ahead.
So he was, the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. And, there was Lovie Smith as the head coach. And he was the one who was advocating really hard for the Bucs to pull the trigger on Jameis Winston, which they did. But it wasn't working, allegedly, under Lovie Smith. So then Dirk Cutter, at that time known as the quarterback whisperer, comes in and is expected, had always been looked at as the person who was going to save Jameis Winston from himself. Didn't quite work out that way, but the point being, he was always lurking. He may not have been a head coach, but he was always lurking as that next man up if Lovie didn't do what Lovie was supposed to do. And I think, to your point, with all of the success that Nate McMillan has had as a head coach, it makes you think about whether or not he's going to be waiting in the wings. And then one more thing, Jarvis, before we move on, when I look back at last season, even though we knew that John Collins was out on suspension, even though we knew that starters like Kevin Huerter were coming in and out due to injury, and that they had 2 rookies that seemingly were slow in finding their footing, weren't we moving towards the All-Star break with questions of whether or not we'd see Lloyd Pierce at the end of that bench after All-Star break? And that was last year with extenuating circumstances.
There you go.
So now, like you said, this year, with really no room for error because of all of the things that Travis Schlenk's team has gone out and done to put this team in contention, and a team that supposedly has been waiting for 9 months to get a crack at this thing. The team that was lobbying to get into the bubble, but was one of the 8 teams that was left out. No question that it is playoff or bust time here in Atlanta and at State Farm Arena.
No doubt about it. And one more, And one more little story, interesting storyline I got to bring up, and I want to get your thoughts on is we all know that John Collins is going into the last year of his contract, and from what we've been told, that the conversations have continued. They're going on. John Collins' camp initially, hey, max contract, 20 and 10,
Yes.
that type of situation. But I came across this quote, and I want to get your thoughts on it, that from John Collins, and it kind of maybe may or may not be coming off of that max because we've seen
Mm-hmm.
De'Aaron Fox,
Yep.
Jason Tatum, all those guys get between 160 and 190 million dollars, and I know that looks amazing to John right
Yes.
they see right about now.
Right.
However, here's the thing. He said he knows this is a business. And when we're talking
Yes.
max numbers and money, I feel like I definitely am in that conversation to have earned that money with the Hawks specifically,
Yes.
to the HAC. Uh, but obviously, I know there's business and we don't always get exactly what we want.
Yes.
What does that mean to you, Miss Batiste?
I think that's actually a very positive statement because
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's almost like subconsciously he's saying, I understand that I may want the max contract, but I may not get the max contract. And that, hey, that's how business happens. But I hear in there as well that if I'm gonna not get the max contract, but I can get close to it and stay with the Hawks, I'm good.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And I think he understands as well, right, wrong, or indifferent, that 25 game suspension may have played heavily in the favor of the Hawks because
No
they
doubt.
can still say, we don't have a full resume for you from last season. We just don't from which to choose. Whereas I'm looking at
That's
Jason
something that
Tatum.
you can control. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? That's
Something that you can control. We're not
The
right. We're not
injuries,
talking about
yeah,
injury here.
we can't do that.
We're talking about a poor decision
Yeah.
that hampered our team, which, think about it, Jarvis, in the craziest way, this team, maybe 2 weeks before the pandemic shut everything down, was still mathematically in the playoff hunt. I mean, that's how bad the Eastern Conference, the bottom of the Eastern Conference is. So yeah, that is a leveraging tool that the Hawks organization may actually be using to say, we believe that you're close to the max, but when we're looking at these players who are getting these max contracts, here's what their resumes say versus what your resume says. And we can't completely go off the potential of what your resume could have been had you been here for 25 games. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, our resume took a big hit from, what you decided to do. So I kind of think it's a little bit of concession in there. And I'm hopeful that maybe it is a little bit concession because, don't get me wrong, I do think just because of what the market dictates that he's still going to get in the ballpark of that max contract, and deservedly so. I think he's going to show us that he's an even better player than he has been in the past. I think he's going to have a true full breakout season this year. But on the same token, you got to show us that you're truly supposed to be in that conversation with the likes of a Jason Tatum.
Yeah, indeed. I'm looking forward to see how this thing plays out. Because December 21st, is the deadline. So we shall see as we ramp up towards that. We'll see if JC gets what he wants, or if the Hawks get what they want. And I lean towards the Hawks probably getting what they want.
I agree. That's what I'm sensing too.
Speaking of getting what they want, the Falcons got to win. If you didn't notice, 43-6 to the Las Vegas Raiders.
I know, it's still weird.
6, man. My whole thing is, I was actually still got a chance to cover the game, and remind me when we offline.
Of course. Yeah, we can't tell you all the
some inquiries about you. Just remind me to tell you about that. But
we can't tell you everything. Jarvis and I have
everything out there on these streets.
Undercover on these streets, not everything.
But the one thing that stood out to me with this game is that the fact that the Falcons defense dominated. Like they won this game.
They won.
Forced this Falcons offense, who has been terrible, in my Charles Barkley voice, in the red zone. They forced them to get in the zone. They gave them so many opportunities that, hey, y'all gonna at least have to get 2 of these.
Right.
Put 2 of these in the end zone, and
Yes.
we should be good to go. So you can give us some
Sure.
momentum, so we can continue to do what we do, and put pressure on the Raiders and Derek Carr.
Mhm.
Like when you think about watching that game or going through that game yesterday,
Mhm.
does it kind of like give you like some? It's like, man, why didn't y'all do this earlier?
Yeah. See,
Like,
Jarvis, that's what I was gonna say.
I
I
hate
don't
to put it
know.
like that, but that's just what
Yeah.
it is.
Oh no, I'm Jarvis. If there was a way to hit the ding button or the cosign like our buddy Carl Dukes does on the afternoon show over at our station, I would ding 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 because I'm co-signing with you on that. It is the most melancholy feeling ever, and we can say this as media. We can remain objective, but there was a moment in time, and Jarvis can tell you about this. It's just as clear as day, where it was maybe that third game where the Falcons were in. I know they're not about to blow this again. It was maybe that third time in a row that we saw them about to blow another game that they actually did blow. And recall, everybody in our media section, we were all over the place emotionally. We were angry, we were frustrated, we were scratching our heads, because when you watch a team in the offseason and you see all of the talent that's there, and I don't take anything away from the injuries, sending things up and down, the different philosophies that may have come in the beginning with Dan Quinn at the helm versus with Raheem Morris at the helm. But the bottom line is, I remember us all saying, wow, some were like, I can't believe this, but I can believe this. Others were like, no, you really thought this was not going to happen? That's this whole season in a nutshell. That is this team in a nutshell. We don't know what to make of it, because as much as they dominated a very good Raiders team as far as what we had seen in the weeks prior, I literally sat back and said, okay, but how are you going to do that again against the Saints, when we saw the Saints legitimately thrash you? The score may not have shown it because of who was under center for them. So they didn't score a ridiculous amount of points. But what they did to literally destroy, they owned the line. Just beat you up at the line of scrimmage. They dared you to do anything that you wanted to do, and they said, we got to counter for that. And then the few things that made the Falcons successful in that first half to get those, quote unquote, to get those 3 field goals, the Saints did a phenomenal job of adjusting in the second half to say, oh, that's it. We'll give you 3 little field goals, but that's all it's going to be. So that's where I stand. I take nothing away from the effort that was delivered on Sunday. I was thinking about what your reaction was with Debo and what he was able to do, because I know you've been saying for the last several weeks, it's so good to see the return of that Deion Jones. And I don't doubt that we're going to see that Deion Jones, because Deion still had a solid game against the Saints. He didn't have a bad game per se against the Saints and kind of holding Kamara in check. But Jarvis, the question is, do we get to see this version of the Falcons again this Sunday, whether that means the Falcons put forward that kind of effort, or do they truly have an answer on defense for the Saints?
I think it's all a matter of how they protect Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
And that's been the case for ever since he stepped foot in his door back in 2008. And and there's 2 ways to do that. One, they can run the football consistently and get yardage. Get yardage. And be successful doing it. And be able to get your hands on the Saints defensive line and move them off the football, and not be retreating once the ball is snapped. Because we know once the Falcons become one-dimensional, that's when the Band-Aids come off, the bandages come off, and you just reveal the trueness of this Falcons offensive line, because they can't be successful dropping back 40-something times a game. And they can't do that. They just can't do that. Caleb McGarry is not built like that. Carpenter isn't built like that. He's just those are guys that you can lean on. They can lean on their defensive line and be successful in the run game.
Mm-hmm.
And once they have that two-way go on offense, they can kind of catch them off guard. Like, oh yeah, I can get a 7-step drop in now because we've been running the football for about 6 plays in a row, and they're
Yes.
tired and they're winded and they can't,
Mm-hmm.
rush like they were, like a rabid dog ready to eat,
Yes.
like they did the last time they played against the New Orleans Saints. So
Mm-hmm.
and so those are the couple things that I see that the Falcons are going to have to be able to do. They're going to be able to run the football,
Mm-hmm.
and be able and spread the ball around.
Yes.
And like whether or not Julio is in there or not,
Mm-hmm.
this offense has been the most successful when they spread the football around,
Yeah.
and that's a combination of let the defense giving you taking what the defense gives you and dictating what you want to do on offense. And I
Yeah.
think that's been a thing that we've had conversations throughout this entire season about those philosophies. And
Mm-hmm.
Dirk kind of seems to skew towards the latter. But I think right now for this team, like they have to run the ball and be able to take what they get from the defense,
Yeah.
but
But
they have to the majority of the time they're going to have to say, "Here's what we want to do, and here's who we
yes.
want to get the football," and then they're going to have to
Yes.
convert and execute.
That yeah, and that's the thing for me. That comment was made earlier in the season that when Dirk Cutter was answering the question about scheming, and he was saying that, hey, we take what the defense gives us. And I was thinking, well, when I look at some of the power offenses in this league, my first person who comes to mind, honestly, is Patrick Mahomes
No doubt,
and what he's
hands
able
down.
to do. And I literally said to myself, no, a top-notch and elite offense is going to dictate and impose their will. Just like last night, and I gotta say this because everybody's been trolling him, so I'm just gonna go ahead and troll him too. Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator for the Eagles, makes a little comment to DK
Right,
Metcalf about him not being Charles Johnson. DK Metcalf is going to be DK
Calvin
Metcalf.
Johnson. Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson, exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Calvin Johnson, I always like Jarvis knows that's the running joke. I always want to call this man a name that he's not, even
Yeah,
though
of
I know
course.
him, have
Yeah,
interviewed him
right.
one-on-one and still want to call him a name that he's totally not. So, he's telling him basically, you're not Megatron. And DK Metcalf then goes out and torches the Eagles for 177 yards, his career high. But my point being that Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf and company, don't let that score from last night fool you. That game was not as close as that 23-17 final score indicated. They manhandled the Eagles for the entire game. And Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf and that offense did what the heck they wanted to do. And so I challenge what that notion that Dirk put out there. Yes, what the defense gives you at moments, because you don't want to force the issue. Now, I do agree with that. But on the same token, you have horses. You have Julio.
Mindset needs to be.
There you go. We're imposing our will, and then you figure out. Yeah, right. And that's a Raheem Morrisism. All right. Yeah. So we impose our will, and then you figure out how to stop us because we have horses. That's what we meaning the Falcons. They have Matt Ryan. They have Julio Jones if he's a go. But even if he's not a go, they have Calvin Ridley. They have hopefully Todd Gurley back. But we saw the resurgence of Ito Smith. Brian Hill also had a nice contribution on yesterday. Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst. Remember, the Saints are awful when it comes. That's the one place that they struggle is when it comes to defending tight ends. So go ahead, let Hayden eat. Go ahead and take your horses on offense and say, you stop us. And then let's see where we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the easy way to think about it, right? Because like you said, because you have the weapons. Now, if it was a scenario where you don't have that many weapons to throw at people, taking what the defense gives you makes sense.
Yeah.
For the majority of the time. But when like you said, when you have those weapons that you just named, man, you got to make it work. You got to make it work, Dirk.
Yeah,
that's
I like that.
Make it work. Make it work, especially in the red zone.
Yes.
But speaking of
Jarvis,
making
can
them,
I ask you a question?
sure.
Because, as you all may not know, I was home for the weekend, so I did not cover the game. And so I wanted to know from your perspective of being there in person, what is it that you saw that you said to yourself, now outside of the up and down that the Falcons give us on a week to week basis, what did you see that kind of stood out that you feel could be sustained this coming Sunday? Whether that was somebody who was like an X factor that had a standout game that you didn't expect, or somebody that you expected to deliver and they actually did.
Wow, man, like there are two names that popped up in my head when you said somebody that performed that I didn't necessarily expect to, but I always look to. One of them, the
Mm-hmm.
first one is Ito Smith. Uh,
Yes.
I will bang the table for him consistently. I have banged the table for him
Mm-hmm.
consistently, and I will continue to do that because I believe in his talent. I believe what this
Yes.
kid can do, man. And I think that if they are willing to get
Mm-hmm.
him the ball a little bit more, if Todd Gurley is going to be out again this week,
Mm-hmm.
we will, of course, we'll get more information on that as we go along. But
Yes.
I think Ito Smith is a guy that performed well, and I think he can do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So I'm
that's
looking
it.
forward to that. That can be somebody that can lean on a little bit more going forward. Also, Jacob Tuioti Mariner.
Yeah,
This
I
guy,
figured that's what I was waiting to hear. I
this
said, I think I know where you're gonna go.
this guy, like when you think about where he came from, and I
Yeah.
asked him after the game, and you can just see the elation just plaster all over his face as soon. It, I'm pause for a second. When I asked the question, because I asked him, I was just like, man, coming from a undrafted free agent, we all know how hard that path is.
Yes.
We all know what the percentages look like as far as him even being able to make the roster or be on the active roster consistently. Uh, and he came out of UCLA in 2018, and now just on the field, balling, playing,
Yes.
getting to the quarterback, getting strip sacks,
Mm-hmm.
and just being a contributor on a
Yes.
team. And I think that I'm not going to look for him to do this every game, but
Mm-hmm.
I am going. My expectations are going to go up a little bit. My
Yeah.
eyebrows are raised a little bit. I'm like,
Yep.
hey, we know you can do it. So
Yes.
hey, this
So
is something
get it earned.
that we're going to expect from you, and because
Mm-hmm.
we know what we get, we know what to expect from Deion Jones. Like,
Yes.
and that pick six, that's him. That's
That's it.
him
Yeah.
all when he
That is,
came in the league like that,
yes,
and
that
he
is
should be leaving
vintage
by.
Debo.
Yeah, that is Vince's Debo for sure. So I think those two guys are guys that we can look at and say, you know what? I haven't seen 25 in the game lately. What about number 91? We need to see
Yes.
what he
What
got
he can
going on
do,
this game.
right?
Yeah, if nobody's getting there, Stevie Means isn't getting it done, or Alan Bailey's not getting it done, go and
Yeah.
throw the youngster in there because at
Mm-hmm.
this point you want to see who can play because
Yeah.
this is film that Tuioti Mariner is going to be able to send out to all the teams in the league. His agent going to be like, hey,
Hey,
he can do it. He can
you can do it
play
right.
because once the
Mm-hmm.
new regime comes in, you don't know which way they're gonna go.
You don't.
So
Yeah.
hey, if you're an on edge guy like Mariner or Ito, they may be on it. Those guys are meaning guys that don't have long term contracts. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is something. This is your opportunity right here. So I'm looking forward to that. But
Yes.
speaking of looking forward to, there's a game tomorrow at three
Tomorrow
40
in the
p.m. in the
afternoon on a Wednesday.
afternoon on a Wednesday. Ravens Steelers.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you can go into detail about this rivalry,
Yeah.
and
You know I'm feeling
any,
some type
even
of
if you
way,
aren't a fan of
which
these
I am.
particular teams, I know you are a fan of the Steelers. I'm going to make that clear before I move on. I want to get slapped after the show. But when you think about how far this game has been pushed back. It's been pushed back 3 times. It was supposed to be played Thursday night Thanksgiving. They moved it back to Sunday. Okay, got closer to Sunday. Oh, we're gonna move back again. Oh, it's supposed to be
Mhm.
on Monday night. No, Tuesday.
Yep.
I moved to
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yep.
And then they were like, as Monday evening, teams are still waiting
Right.
around. They're supposed to be getting on the
On
plane to
flights
go
and
from
yeah.
flights and stuff, and they still don't quite know yet. And then we come to find out, hey, It's been moved to Wednesday, and the
Yes.
Thursday night game is not going to be played. That's going to be
Right.
moved to Monday.
Mhm.
So it's just a lot
Yes.
of moving parts. And I just want to ask you, like, how do you feel the NFL has done given the situation that they're dealing with right now?
Yeah, so we heard from Dr. Alan Sills directly a few weeks ago when the Falcons had their first kind of brush with COVID 19 and its serious impact that kept a coach and a player out for quite a bit of time, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so Dr. Sills on that conference call said, we're likely going to go into intensive protocols across the board for the remainder of the season, because basically here's what we're looking at. And he actually referenced going into flu season and cold season. So you knew that the protocols were going to be ratcheted up, but you can ratchet up protocols all you want. But if everybody's not adhering to said protocols
or staying at home,
exactly, which is right, which is a part of that protocol process, being safe when you're not on property for your team, then eventually that's going to have a trickle down effect. Or if, and this is the unfortunate thing about COVID, so I do want to at least give the NFL some credit in there are certain things you just cannot account for. So when you look at the Broncos, the reason they didn't have 3 quarterbacks is something that can happen to all of us. You know how people have a tendency, and look, I have my gear on, right? And you have one of these as well.
Yeah.
Where, it comes with your outfit. So you put it on, but then you have a tendency to slip it off at times when maybe you're trying to hold a conversation, person can't understand you, so on and so forth. So you got these 3 QBs, and we know how it is at practice. You've got QB1, QB2, QB3 throwing routes at the same time within close proximity of one another. That's a recipe for disaster if any one of them got infected to be able to pass it on. So that's one of those fallouts that you knew was coming, because you can't control what people are doing once they're off property as easily. But I think now you're starting, especially you're about to see an uptick, whether people like it or not. You've got to wait a little while for the intubation period from Thanksgiving, but you're about to see an uptick in cases. And you can't tell me that we're going to be able to keep doing this with multiple teams and multiple games, multiple weeks. As a Steelers fan, I am beside myself, because you literally are looking at the team that is currently sitting in the number 1 spot in the AFC.
Yeah.
We ain't been that team in a minute. Now, we have been in the number 2 spot. We've gotten close. And I'm not saying that, we're going to get past the Chiefs or anything like that. But when you keep moving, when it's moving parts and you keep moving the finish line for us, now we're playing a game on Wednesday. And yeah, you might push our game back, our next game back, so on and so forth. But you continue to do this. Eventually, it's going to impact our preparation. It's going to impact the product on the field. And that's where I think we are, Jarvis. I think we're about to see impacts to the products that are on the field. Could be something like, yeah, I know you pushed it back for a day to avoid things like, soft tissue injuries, to give, say, the Ravens a little bit more time to prepare. But I think we're about to see a situation where legit the league is going to have to determine not if, but when and how we're going to cancel games, how we're going to shift the back half of the schedule, and what this is going to look like in the bigger scheme of things. I think this is the start of that trickle down on a serious note.
And to be
honest, I'm sorry, I went on and on, but I'm passionate about how this impacts my team, because look, Steeler Nation getting to the playoffs, getting to the AFC title game. I mean, like, that's really not a big deal for us. Like, kind of comes with the territory. So when we are in position strongly for the first time in years to make a serious run for the Super Bowl, and we get impeded like this, it's very, very frustrating.
I mean, I totally understand that. And here's the thing, though, that I think a lot of people need to really understand about this thing. Once you start this thing, once you started it, you had a plan in place.
Yes.
As to how you were going to handle it. Meaning, if you cancel games, you're going to add that extra playoff team. You're going to have 16 teams.
Sure.
So you have a plan in place. So you need to implement that. So if you have to cancel the game, go ahead and cancel the game.
Yeah.
But there's no like, oh, we got to shut it down. No, 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 no. You started the
Right.
thing, you better finish it because
Yeah.
this is what you signed up for. When you
Yeah.
sign up for something like this, you sign up to say we're going to play football in this pandemic. Hey,
Hmm.
you got to keep it rolling.
Right.
Because we all know why.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
we know
Yeah, that
why.
revenue is real.
Yeah, that revenue is real. So
Yeah.
you know what your main goal is. I understand the whole player safety farce that you try to put out there, just to keep it all the way funky, like
Hmm.
this is something that you have to continue to do because you have a plan in place, because you know what to do if XYZ happens. Now
Right.
the ultimate thing hasn't happened, and we pray that that doesn't happen and somebody can lose their life behind this.
Yeah.
Thankfully, most of the people that have been getting this thing have had mild symptoms, or they may have been asymptomatic, or it was a false
Hmm.
positive.
Yes.
But going forward, though, I think you need to be cautious and continue
Yes.
to ramp up those protocols as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
However, life is going to happen,
Yes.
because I was thinking about this as far as um, with Nick Saban. He's tested positive for the second time, and he
Second
wasn't
time.
able
Yeah.
to be on the for the Iron Bowl against Auburn, like they really didn't need him anyway. But
Right.
he tested positive twice. So,
Hmm.
and I don't know about you, I just know for me, just to be quite honest, it was like, what are you doing or not doing for you to catch it twice?
Hmm.
And he may be following the rules and everything, but
Yeah.
somehow, some way, he still ends up getting it. So
Right.
I think right now, just where the NFL is, and it's a lot of bad press. It-
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
lot of negativity coming their way, but it's not like they haven't been through this before.
True.
so,
Yeah.
and I think right now they just have to kind of wade the waters and get those paddles out and get as much water out their boat as possible and try to
Right.
make it
And
to the finish line.
yeah, exactly. And I think to do it sooner rather than later, because it felt like when we saw this play out with MLB, it felt like they moved slower than they should have in the beginning to really fix their problem of it being a trickle down effect and being a wave across one team that then impacted the team that they were going to play, or the team that they played before, or the team after. And then it just kind of trickled and trickled and trickled. And it took them a minute to acknowledge that there was a problem and to figure it out. And I hear what you're saying about the playoffs in terms of like expanding the playoff teams and that sort of thing in the contingency plan. But here's where I still say this thing is a moving target.
Okay.
When you establish that essentially what 3-4 weeks ago you kind of came out with, okay, well, here's what the game plan will potentially be. But that was before the last 2-3 weeks of spikes, unlike anything we've seen maybe since early summer.
Right.
So I'm interested to see not just about the plan that they have in place, but just to be honest, I'm interested to see how they pivot on the plan. Because personally, I don't think that plan that the league announced 4 weeks ago or so is going to work in the iteration that they announced it 4 weeks ago. Because you can't tell me that they thought 4 weeks ago that they would be moving the number one seeded team against their chief rival in their division. You can't tell me that they thought, oh, we'll move them from Thursday to Sunday to Monday to Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's not what you thought. And you certainly
Yeah.
didn't think that your former MVP was going to be a part of the reason you keep making these moves, because it has impacted, a high profile player like a Lamar Jackson, taking nothing away from Cam Newton, but just in terms of where Lamar Jackson is in the pecking order right about now in the league. And so that's really what I'm more interested to see. What's going to be your pivot now that this has actually happened? It's a little bit more exacerbated, I think, than you thought it was going to be when you put this in place 4 weeks ago. And then
Right.
what do these next 4 weeks look like? Are we, looking at weeknight, weekday games? Are we looking at triple headers like December 26th? What is this going to look like? Yeah, for them to get to the finish line. And what are those products going to look like on the field as we see more and more people, potentially more and more players at Lamar's level, being infected and affected by this virus?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's going to definitely be a wait and see type of situation. And this is also going to be a wait and see type of situation because we have come to the end of the show.
Yes, and we gotta say this in 30 seconds. We promise we gotta, because Jarvis gotta go. He's got a job to do. And hey, I gotta go take off all this COVID, Thanksgiving, and all that other weight that that we all are challenged with. But we'd be remiss if we didn't at least acknowledge. We're gonna talk another time because Jarvis and I really want to give this some depth and breadth in terms of the QB situation as it relates to African-American QBs with Georgia. So, hey, we've got that to talk to you guys about. So hang tight because we are going to talk about it.
Yes,
we'll talk about, the fact that Mike Tomlin is leading the charge on the only undefeated in the league and where's his love. We're going to get to, we got stuff. We got stuff to get to. But today, before Jarvis and I have to wrap up, we'd be remiss if not mentioning that Greg McGarity, the longtime AD for the University of Georgia, will be retiring at the end of the year. We knew this was coming. He's been on one-year contracts the past couple of years. But Jarvis, if you had to look at sort of his legacy, of course, we're talking football here because that's kind of the biggest of the legacies. What would that legacy be, and kind of what do we look for in that next AD for Georgia? I think we know the answer, but I just couldn't we couldn't leave out without talking about it.
Yeah, you know what? I think that Greg McGarity has done a stand-up job at Georgia. I can't say he's done an amazing job because I would have liked to have seen a national championship sprinkled in there on his resume. I know he has something to do with it, but he really doesn't, But I think that for him and the job that he's done, because let's just be quite real here. Like Georgia's a well-oiled machine. So it takes a lot for you to mess up what's going on down there. So I think, but McGarity overall, I think he has done a stand-up job down there in Athens. And as far as the next candidate, you know me, I'm always thinking outside of the box. I've even seen Mark Richt name thrown out there. I don't know how I necessarily feel about it, but I like the thought process. I like how people are thinking about throwing those names like that out there. Like former head coaches at universities, we've seen that before. Bill Fulmer up in Tennessee, so that's not something out of the norm. But I like how they're thinking. I want to see somebody who's going to be a person that doesn't necessarily cater to the norm, because we know how college football is and where it is from a diversity standpoint. So I'm always for that. I'm always for anybody who is more than willing to cleanse themselves of the good old boy system, like we try to refer to it as, when it comes to hiring practices. Not only just in coaches, but just in athletic departments as a whole. Like I can walk into those departments, and it's not many people that look like me, So I'm always a proponent of diversity, because the more diversity that you have, I think the better off you'll be, because you have people with different experiences. And that makes for a better work environment and that's my wholehearted belief.
Agreed. And I know that you can get that diversity if you put forth the effort to find that person who should be that next AD, who actually helps you to put together a team that not just contends, but can get over the hump with that national championship, because you do get tired of, this will be actually the first time in 4 years that Georgia won't represent the SEC East in the title game. So there's work to be done, even to get them back to form as Florida continues to evolve and continues to get better. So you hope that the AD can bring that to them, somebody who can help them get over the hump. But shake things up in Athens and see what happens.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're going to do right now. We're going to shake things up and go ahead and close this thing out. But always remember, you can follow me at Jarvis D90. It's right there. I think you should be able to see it right there. And at Tenitra Batiste on Twitter. Good Lord.
We are my name trips him up all these years later, but okay.
Google Podcasts, Spotify. Go hit us up on there, please.
Yes.
Like I don't like to beg. Follow us on this podcast thing, man. We've been doing this thing for a minute. It's fun. You like listening to us or watching us. Come on now, stop playing around. And with that being said, Tenitra, take us out with this benediction.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys continue to be safe and vigilant in these streets. Corona is not playing with you, nor will the flu, because this is flu season. So we got to be careful and be vigilant about how we're interacting, especially over these next few weeks in this holiday season. And listen, we know sometimes things get so serious. Just take a minute, take a breather, enjoy the fact that we all made it to December 1st. What? We have made it through 11 months of this year and almost 9 months of this pandemic. So stay strong through the end of the year and enjoy the rest of your week. And you know what? We know you're not doing anything on Saturday at 6 o'clock. So you might as well hop in your car or go to the radio.com app and check out Jarvis and me on the show, 6 o'clock Eastern time on 92.9 The Game on Saturday. See ya.
For the fill in the blanks, I'm Jarvis. She's Tenitra. We'll see y'all next week. Same time, same place. Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Unless Tenitra and my wife want to have a Yas girl minute.
Right. Might be 4:06, 4:07. No. 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock this week. We'll see y'all.
See ya.